Welcome to the Olive Grove podcast.
Great to be here.
You've sent us your sources, and we're here to really dig into them, pull out those key insights.
So you can get a solid handle on what really matters.
Exactly. Think of it like a shortcut to getting well-informed on these topics.
And today, we are taking a deep dive into, well, it's a study of 1 John chapter 4, specifically the MCS 1 John chapter 4 material that was shared.
Right, and our mission, our goal here, is to really understand its core ideas.
Yeah, particularly how it talks about telling the difference, between spiritual influences from God and, well, those that aren't.
Okay, let's unpack this then. The study kicks off with this really interesting comparison.
The analogy.
Yeah, the analogy about how kids tend to inherit traits from their father.
Right, and it uses that image to talk about figuring out whose influence is at work spiritually, God's or the devil's.
It even connects back, doesn't it, to chapter 3? Like this idea of a biblical family resemblance.
It does.
Yeah.
Which kind of reinforces how these ideas build on each other throughout the letter.
So this core concept, lineage and inheritance, but applied spiritually, that's quite something.
It is. The text really seems to suggest that, just like you might see family traits, you can spot the source of a spirit by looking at its character, its nature, and the message it promotes.
Right. And the very first big point, 1 John 4, verse 1, it's pretty direct.
Dear friends, don't trust every spirit.
Yeah. On the contrary, test the spirits to see whether they are from God.
Because many false prophets have gone out into the world.
So it's a clear call right off the bat. Be discerning. Don't just nod along.
Exactly. And it immediately gives the reason for that caution, these many false prophets.
Right. Who the study links to Satan, who Christian theology calls the father of lies.
So it sets up this immediate need for a reliable way to sort truth from falsehood.
And then verses 2 and 3, they give us the first test.
The big one.
Acknowledging that Yeshua the Messiah came as a human being.
Yeah, the study really stresses that point. Any spiritual influence that denies that specific belief.
That Jesus is God, but in human form.
Right. That influence isn't from God. And in fact, it embodies what the text calls the spirit of the anti-Messiah.
That's a critical distinction, isn't it? It's not just saying Jesus was, a great teacher or prophet.
No, the source material is clear on that, recognizing him as just a great man, isn't it? The absolute core is accepting his divine nature within a human body.
So that becomes like the first fundamental check. Where's this spiritual message really coming from?
Precisely.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting for me. The study talks about Antichrist.
Two meanings.
Yeah. One is about that future figure, from Revelation.
Right.
But the other meaning, the one relevant here in chapter 4, is about those who oppose the idea that Jesus was truly God in the flesh.
And the study, it's worth noting, makes a specific connection there, drawing a parallel with certain aspects of Islamic theology regarding Jesus' nature.
Which is, well, it's a specific theological interpretation being offered by the source material.
Absolutely. It's interpreting this denial of Jesus' full divinity as embodying that Antichrist spirit, which, according to John, is already present and active in the world.
Okay. Then verse 4. This feels like a shift, a really encouraging message for believers.
You children are from God and have overcome the false prophets.
Because he who is in you is greater than he who is in the world. That speaks volumes about the power believers are understood to have, right, through the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, if you tie it back to that initial idea, the spiritual lineage, the text is basically saying, look, as children of God, you're not defenseless against these deceptions.
Because you have God's Spirit within you.
Exactly. That indwelling presence provides the strength, the discernment needed to tell truth from lies.
Then verse 5 draws a contrast. Where do different ideas come from?
They are from the world. Therefore, they speak from the world's viewpoint, and the world listens to them.
The study reads that as a kind of fundamental conflict. Worldly views versus godly truth.
Implying we shouldn't just value all opinions equally, perhaps.
That seems to be the suggestion. It raises that big question about truth and authority.
Yeah, the source suggests that viewpoints originating purely from a worldly perspective, separate from God, are, well, inherently flawed.
And the world finds those views appealing.
Naturally drawn to them, is how the text puts it.
And verse 6 just hammers that division home, doesn't it?
We are from God. Whoever knows God listens to us. Whoever is not from God doesn't listen to us.
Wow.
This is how we distinguish the spirit of truth from the spirit of error.
It seems to draw a really clear line. Who's aligned with God and who isn't, based on how they respond to the message being proclaimed.
Yeah, what stands out there is the claim that if you have a genuine connection with God, you'll recognize and respond to the truth.
And if you don't,
You remain unreceptive, which in itself reveals your spiritual alignment, according to this passage.
okay, so that's the first big test, acknowledging Jesus. Now, the study introduces a second crucial test, verses 7 and 8.
Love.
Love. Beloved friends, let us love one another, because love is from God.
And everyone who loves has God as his Father and knows God.
Those who do not love do not know God, because God is love.
It's huge.
It really elevates love, doesn't it? It's not just an action, but a defining mark of a true believer.
And the definition it gives, God is love. Not just that God does loving things.
Exactly. It's his very essence, his nature. So the implication is, if you're truly a child of God,
You'll naturally show that same kind of selfless, sacrificial love.
that's the idea.
Verses 9 and 10 then give the prime example, right? God's ultimate act of love in Christian belief.
Sending his son as the kapara, the atonement for sins.
Yeah, the study really leans into the sheer scale of that sacrifice.
Yeah.
It asks you to think, what would it mean to give up your own child, even for people who oppose you?
It becomes the ultimate demonstration of that sacrificial love we were just talking about.
It's a benchmark. God sending Jesus sets the standard for what love looks like and how our own love should be measured.
Which leads straight into verses 11 and 12. Because God loved us like that.
We likewise ought to love one another.
And this study connects this ability to love back to the Holy Spirit inside believers.
Right. God's presence in us is what empowers us to show that kind of love. It's not just human effort.
It's a reciprocal.
Yeah.
We receive God's love, then we're called and enabled to give it to others.
And the text presents that act of loving others as the way God's love in us is perfected or made complete, made visible.
Okay, verse 13 gives another confirmation of our connection to God.
The gift of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah, and the study brings in Ephesians here, calling the Spirit a kind of down payment.
Or a guarantee.
Right, a guarantee on our eternal inheritance.
So it reinforces that the Spirit isn't just, a feeling. It's presented as a tangible sign of our relationship with God and the future hope believers have.
Yeah, and verses 14 to 15 circle back to testimony.
Those who've seen and believed Jesus is the Son of God.
The study includes the original apostles in that we, but extends it, right, to everyone who accepts Jesus.
Emphasizing again that this belief, Jesus as the divine Son of God, is absolutely central to being united with God.
It keeps coming back to that foundational point.
It really does. The unwavering acknowledgement of who Jesus is, not just a historical figure, but divine. That's presented as the key to relationship with God.
And finally, the last section, 16 through 21, it keeps weaving that theme of love through everything.
Knowing and trusting God's love for us is tied directly to our ability to love others.
Yeah, this study really finishes strong on that point, highlighting how contradictory it is to claim you love God.
While hating your brother or sister.
Because everyone is made in God's image, so deserving of love.
These final verses really pull it all together, don't they? They make that direct link. Experiencing God's love leads inescapably to the command to love our neighbor.
It's like the evidence.
Exactly. Love for others is presented as the direct consequence and really the proof of our love for God.
Okay, so summing this up, what does this deep dive into the study of 1 John 4 mean for you listening?
Well, it seems the core message, as presented in this source, really boils down to two key ways to check things out.
Check out spiritual influences and maybe the people promoting them.
Yeah. First, do they get Jesus right? Do they acknowledge him as God who came in human flesh?
Test number 1.
And second, do they actually show love, that selfless act of love for other people?
Well, that's number 2.
And the study presents these as, reliable indicators. Are they aligned with God? It draws that direct line between understanding Jesus' identity and having genuine love in your life.
Wow. Definitely a lot to think about there. Hopefully this deep dive gave you a clearer view on these, vital ideas from 1 John chapter 4.
Indeed. It certainly pushes us to think critically about the messages we hear and see.
And it hammers home that connection, doesn't it? Believing the truth about Jesus and living a life marked by love. They seem inseparable here.
Absolutely.
All right, we're going to take just a brief pause here for a mid-episode message. We just wanted to quickly mention the My Christian Space community.
Yeah, it's a really great online space.
For connecting with other Christians, sharing about faith, encouraging each other.
It's definitely worth checking out if you're looking for that kind of connection.
We also want to highlight the fantastic work of Enduring Freedom Ministries.
Their goals are so practical and impactful, aren't they? Right in the community.
Totally. They're focused on providing really essential care for people who need it. Things like a hot meal,
And our groceries to take with them.
clothing, even just the dignity of a haircut.
And laundry services, too. It's
Yeah.
about meeting those really fundamental human needs.
Yeah, with real compassion and genuine care.
What's great is how direct and sort of holistic it is. They get that people facing hardship often need help in several areas at once.
And they try to address that respectfully.
Exactly.
And here's something really tangible. You can actually partner with them in this.
How's that?
Well, for just $4 a month, that specific amount, $4,
Okay.
can help Enduring Freedom Ministries provide all those services we just listed, the meal, groceries, clothing, haircut, laundry, for one person.
Wow, $4 covers all that for one individual.
That's the goal. It's a really direct way to show love and make, a pretty significant difference in someone's day, someone's life.
That's incredibly efficient and impactful.
So if you feel led, if you want to support that kind of compassionate work, maybe consider that monthly donation, $4. Every bit truly helps them help others.
Definitely something to consider.
And that brings us toward the end of this deep dive.
Mm-hmm.
If you found this exploration, this look into 1 John chapter 4, helpful or insightful,
We hope you did.
then please do subscribe to the Olive Grove podcast right here on YouTube. That way you won't miss our future discussions.
And you can also get early access to these deep dives, plus other content sometimes,
Who's that?
over on the My Christian Space website. Lots more resources there and ways to connect with the community, too.
Great stuff. Well, thanks so much for tuning in today for this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for joining us.
We look forward to our next exploration together.